Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the E-Discovery Channel. Tom O'Connor here from beautiful downtown New Orleans, dodging another hurricane as we're heading into the last week of October, which kind of begins the high holidays for New Orleans, starting with Halloween, going into, of course, football season, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then a little thing called Mardi Gras that we kick off right after Christmas time. So we're looking forward to it. It's a great time of year. I'm really happy to have with me today Joe Bartolo. Um, Joe's for those of you who don't know him, Joe's been a consultant in our space for ages. Thanks for joining me, Joe. Um,
Happy to be here,
you
Tom.
know,
Thank you.
you're currently with something called the project consultant, which, as I understand it, is a kind of a boutique gathering or group of independent guys. But you go way back. I don't know if you know. You just referenced when we were talking ahead of time the early days of the EDRM and the different working groups. And I remember you back in the days of Icon in New York.
Yes.
You were in the Icon office, which was, and I was doing independent work with Summation back in those days. And the New York office of Icon was the only one anybody in the Summation world trusted to do a Summation load file. who used to who used to get load files from all over, offices all over the country, and inevitably we would end up having to call the New York office and say, "Hey, can you fix this? Can somebody please fix this thing?" And now of course we've gone way beyond that. But I remember that. I do remember the days of the early days of Icon. Then you had quite a resume. I was looking at it. You were with Icon for a while, but then you were with DTI, Kierstead, right?
Yep.
Valora, and Novos. I mean, some great names there. So, I mostly talked to you at trade shows, at tech shows, because as I said to you earlier, you swim in the deep end of the pool, and I tend to be down at the practice end with the people with the small data sets. We're looking over, seeing what you guys are doing. So, but my interest today was in I've been seeing press releases and posts all over the place, LinkedIn, on the LDI. And then I noticed a couple in the last week or so where you posted about the LDI, and I kind of knew what it was, basically what it was about, but didn't know any of the details. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk to you. And I think we saw each other at Ilticon, right? And we
Yes.
were, yeah, yeah. Um, and I thought once I saw that you were involved with it, you could give us a really better understanding. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us what the LDI is and what you folks are doing and how it's going to help us in the wide world of e-discovery.
Sure thing. And I appreciate this opportunity, Tom. Thank you very much. Always an honor to talk to you and a pleasure, and happy to participate in this. And also, congratulations on the release of your book recently,
Oh,
a few days back,
yeah,
with AI for everyone, and for all of us. And I think that's a great accomplishment, and I'm looking forward
well,
to taking a look at that.
we'll
So,
we'll wait till the reviews come in.
I'm sure you're giving wise counsel, and you and I go way back. And as you're talking about summation load files, making me smile.
Right.
Thinking about the days of legacy data, and I was a practicing attorney and was actually very intrigued. I'm a computer geek at heart, which is kind of what led me into this space. And I was very intrigued by what was going on in the world of summation and concordance back in the day, and felt like this is really interesting to me. And I think I want to be involved with this full time in terms of the e-discovery technology that is out there. And happy I made that transition, over 20 years ago, and have been more on the consulting legal technology side since.
Great.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak about LDI. I'm happy to be part of LDI. And we touched on the early days of EDRM. I was involved with EDRM in its second year of existence. It was founded in 2004. The working groups were kind of started in 2005, and I was part of one of the first working groups, which was the metrics group. Always like to try to be involved with collaborative industry efforts because I think they're important. I was on the ACEDS board of directors in the New York chapter for ACEDS for a couple of years.
Okay.
Again, I think these types of organizations are all very helpful. I've certainly been involved with ARMA events in the past and spoken on different ARMA panels. And I think it's very helpful when people that focus on different aspects of technology and managing data and managing risk get together and collaborate and discuss best practices. And I appreciate all things like organizations like the Sedona conference do as well, which get super deep into the weeds in terms of offering advice as to what's legally defensible and what's good practices in e-discovery and beyond, and other related fields like the more macro level information governance, which e-discovery, in my opinion, is more of a subset of these days. Also, obviously, I think AI governance is having a big impact on the world, as is data privacy and cybersecurity. And LDI came to light because of the intersection that involves managing data, that involves all of these aspects. So different people with different roles may see their obligations and see what they need to fulfill in terms of reducing risk and making sure that their workflows are proper. So their things they do are impacting the rest of the organization. So even though many organizations are siloed in nature and have different departments that maybe use different technologies, and they don't really speak with one another that often or interact with one another that often, there needs to be more of a collaborative effort amongst those different professionals, especially in terms of managing innovation and managing data and managing risk. So that there needs to be some collaborative effort that discusses the disparate data landscape of the organization at a macro level, and looks at all the different departments and looks at all the different silos. And if any one silo is making a decision, they have to realize that decision is impacting the other silos that are also involved in the same organization.
That's a great
I
point.
often,
Yeah.
I often liken organizations to being an octopus. They have one centralized brain, but they may have 8 different arms, and the brain needs to control all different 8 arms at the same time. If one arm is going off and acting rogue, it's very difficult for the octopus to function as a whole. So, that being said, LDI sort of came to be to address that aspect of the fact that these different specialists need to be speaking together. And obviously, most organizations have someone like a chief technology officer or a chief information security officer. Even large law firms have their own business needs that make them very similar to a Fortune 1000 organization in dealing with their own internal administrative business needs. And they have data management obligations that are sometimes even more complex than the organizations they represent, because large law firms have their own data, and then they have maybe 100 different corporate organizations' data in part, if they're involved in representing those organizations for litigation or things like due diligence for mergers and acquisitions. So because of all these issues, and because of all the complexity involved with both law firms and corporate law departments, and the increasing risk involved with the spate of cybersecurity hackings and the teeth that have been given to these data privacy laws, where these organizations are more subject to severe monetary sanctions if they're not properly managing their data, there's been much more of a collective effort, at the corporate level, at the law firm level, to try to come up with ways to manage these obligations and make sure that they're not having a risk that's too high, and make sure that they are not violating any regulatory policies that may apply to what they have to do. So LDI came to be saying, let's get some people that are e-discovery professionals, get some people that are more involved with managing information, that maybe traditional records management experience. Let's get people involved from legal operations, from more of the clock type world. Let's get attorneys involved with different specialties, maybe corporate attorneys, legal attorneys that are involved with litigation. Let's get some risk managers. So it's a cross section of different personnel, compliance officers that joined the first round of LDI, and we've been having annual meetings. We're divided into 4 different groups. I'm in the data protection and compliance group. The other groups that are involved also involve a dispute and investigations group, a corporate group, and a business of law group. And we're all focused on slightly different things, but they all are under the purview of managing data, managing information, and we're not necessarily trying to define a specific best practice. but we're giving frameworks and models, and we're giving suggestions on how to deal with real world issues that people that function in these different roles are going to have to deal with. And one of the analogies I used is the frameworks and the models that we're working on. For instance, we're working on revising a data breach model that we already have up on the LDI website, which is ldi.org. And if you're interested in getting involved with LDI, we did just put out a release earlier this week about the next round of LDI for 2026. So if you're interested in joining the effort, there is an application on there, and there's a process of review. And we'd be happy to have you, if you're interested, we'd be happy to have you apply, and hopefully you can join the effort. Um, there are basically two roles in LDI. There are LDI architects, which are those that are actively involved in the 4 different working groups I mentioned, and there are LDI ambassadors. And LDI ambassadors will be those that will be provided resources and provided materials from the LDI working groups that will be out advancing the cause of LDI and advancing its message, and getting those that want to be interested in joining future rounds of LDI architects. As the initiative expands, you'll be able to do that. So if you're not an LDI architect, you may be an LDI ambassador, and we'd be happy to have you, in either capacity. So that being said, we're putting out different models. The data breach and compliance group is working on a data breach reference model. There is already one on the LDI website. We're working on an updated one, and that will give a framework for organization that's had a data breach that has to do an audit. And it's not necessarily meant to be the end all be all, but it is a universal document that will make, as a football analogy, will make organizations be able to at least get themselves into the red zone using it as a framework for when they have a data breach. And then they may need to customize that model slightly to their organization to make sure they have a model that works for them and gets them in the red zone, and keeps them fully compliant with what they need to do as their data breach obligations, and hopefully puts them in a better position where they can avoid that from happening to that organization again. So that's what the data protection and compliance group was working on. We also recently released a white paper that I was a co-author of, along with Brioni Myers and Mike Kearney, and that is available on the website as well. So that has to do with some of the efforts that we're working on, and also has to do with our model of initiate, investigate, and implement, which is the 3 I's that we suggest in terms of how you would follow an investigation when you have a data breach issue. And then the other groups are working on other issues. The risk and investigations group is working on things that are more, that I'm familiar with from my past in terms of the e-discovery community, the discovery world, and also internal investigations, and the tools and technology, and the frameworks for how you would go about conducting those in a cost efficient and risk effective manner. And then the business use of law group is really kind of focused on the actual administrative and logistic aspects of large law firms, and again, some of the similar needs they have to these large corporate organizations, that they have their own regulatory obligations to deal with, and they have their own issues to deal with when employees depart that are similar, in need and scope, and maybe they even have their own hacking issues or their own, ransomware issues that they're facing, similar to some of the large corporate organizations they represent. And then the corporate group is dealing with things like mergers and acquisitions, and due diligence, and things more along the lines of what corporate lawyers would have to deal with on when there's actual large business transactions. And certainly, Tom, my experience on the technology side, I'm focused more dealing with larger firms and larger matters. But I've dealt with all sorts of issues, and dealt with very small matters as well, and even fortunately been on the consultative side of some MDLs on the plaintiff side, where there's a lot of firms involved, and there is a large data set.
Yep.
But those plaintiffs firms are only responsible for their clients only represent a small piece of that data set, and they're coming up with ways of sharing access to the
but the issues touch them all.
shared.
You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yep.
The interplay between the two. That's why I was so interested in this.
Yep.
The issues cross over all types and sizes of firms. Yeah,
Absolutely. And LDI can certainly providing useful context. We're providing white papers that talk about the impact that generative AI is having on the legal profession. So, I mean, these are useful regardless of the size and scope of the law firm that wants to take a look at these resources, or based on, even for small organizations, this is useful, helpful guidance for them. At least if they're, especially if they're a startup and they're struggling and they're not really sure where to get started with some of these issues in terms of go forward solutions. A lot of the resources that are available on the LDI website are tremendously helpful.
Great. And you mentioned white papers and reports. Is there an annual meeting or a conference of some kind? Is there a get together? How does that work?
We had an annual meeting, our first one in January this past year. We're planning our next one in February of 2026. And we tend to meet during other large conferences where there's a lot of the LDI folks that are in attendance. Like, for instance, Relativity Fest, we had a large LDI gathering out in
Okay.
Chicago while many of the members were there.
And
We,
so
we had
the February meeting, are you thinking about? I forget when the date is, but interface with Legal Week, is that in February?
it's probably going to be Legal Week. I think is going to be more. Legal Week is my birthday this year, which is the week of March 10th. I
Ah,
think it's March 9th. I think it starts. So I'll be celebrating my birthday at Legal Week in New York this year in 2026 next year, and in I believe it coincides with the Net Diligence conference. It's going to be in Florida at the same time the Net Diligence conference is going on. But
good, good choice
it's
in
not.
February.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not 100% confirmed as to the LDI get together dates
Yeah,
yet,
yeah.
though. So that should be confirmed shortly. For those that are going to be architects moving forward with the 2026 effort.
Okay.
And I was just notified myself this past week that I was approved for, because you have to reapply each year. So I was approved to be involved with LDI again for my second year. So I will continue on with my involvement with the data protection and compliance group.
Excellent. So you're an architect.
I'm an architect, and if you're familiar with the Monty Python Flying Circus episode from the early '70s, that word makes me laugh. But but if you're not familiar with it, you can find that on
Oh yeah.
YouTube, and you'll
Oh
see and
yeah.
you'll see why the word architects makes me
Yeah.
laugh. But yes, I'm happy to be a legal data intelligence architect. You can also find the website at legaldataintelligence.org, but it just for short, LDI.org also works. So
Okay. Good.
may as well use that one.
Okay. Good. Well, that's great. That's a great overview because I was intrigued, especially, I saw not just your names, but some of the other people who were involved. Um, Farrah Pepper and Laura Kibbe, and
Yeah.
I think Scott Milner. Some
Yes.
some names that not only people I know, but highly respect in the field. So I thought
Yeah.
there's something going on here that I need to find out about. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely.
okay.
Bobby Malhotra was one of the
Oh, that's
founders
right,
of the
Bobby. I
group,
saw his
and
name on the list.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and my working group leaders with data protection and compliance have been Sarah Bennington from Qualcomm
Okay.
And Briody Myers from Capital One, they've both been absolutely great to collaborate with and making themselves readily available, and the Relativity is involved with the effort as well. So
Ah.
the team Relativity has been very supportive in
Okay.
terms of their human resources and helping organize us logistically and get us together and keep scheduling the group meetings and things of that nature.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, Joe, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about it. That's a lot of food for thought there. I'm going to dive into the. I took a cursory look at the website. That's where I saw the
Sure.
founders and some of those names I mentioned. But I'll dive into especially some of those white papers in specific areas. And I'd highly recommend anybody who's listening in, if you want to learn more, to go to ldi.org. Is
LDI.org, and just to tell you how how growing of an organization this is in terms of its importance. We recently mentioned by IDC in one of their reviews, talking about all the good work that we're doing. I was on a panel at Relativity Fest with Ryan Costello from Haystack and George Phillips from Morgan Lewis.
okay.
So that was very enjoyable working with both of them on that panel session. And I also am a contributing author for Legal versus Media, as I believe you are. And I have an article that kind of recapped Relativity Fest that was just up there that also talks about LDI in that recap. In addition, Phil Saunders, the CEO of Relativity,
Sure.
actually mentioned LDI in his blog post recapping Relativity Fest as the very first hyperlink that he shared in his blog post talking about the importance of the initiative that's going on via
Excellent.
LDI.
Excellent. All right. Well, then I highly recommend anybody who's listening in, take a look at LDI.org and look for some of the members, some of those names you saw at conferences. Um, if you can't make it to the user conference in February, obviously some of the other ones that are going on where members are likely to participate. Joe, thanks so much for your time, and
Thank you, Tom. An honor.
great talking to you, catching up, and I don't know that I'll see you anywhere between now and the end of the year. So have a great holiday season.
You do the same. I wish you well, and I'm sure I'll see you at Legal Tech in New York in March.
Sounds good.
But maybe I'll see you before, and I hope all else as well. Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Thank you, Joe.